Hello and welcome to Isolation, the human story of the pandemic. My name's Jody Cooper, and this is the first in a series of podcasts on this subject. And today I would like to welcome you to my guest, Dominik. And Dominik's here to share his story basically during the pandemic. So Dominik, I was wondering if you could maybe tell me a little bit about the beginnings of the pandemic for you, your experiences, maybe what you were doing on the day when the world went into lockdown.
I don't recall the exact day anymore because for me it was a slow process that came up. But when the schools started going into lockdown and everything slowly started to shut down, I recall having a bad lung infection at home. So for me, this was like a pre-start of the pandemic. So the infection had nothing to do with the virus, but I was already in illness or isolation mode because I was at home.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. And one big thing I remember was having to reorganize our complete daily routine. The schools closed down, the kindergarten closed down, the playgrounds were closed, all the shops were closed except the essential things. I remember being thankful that it wasn't winter but rather more spring, so we could at least go out into the forest and spend time there. And but the biggest challenge was being home a lot.
Yeah.
We have a small apartment with 4 people, so that was challenging for everybody.
I can imagine.
Yes. So we tried to adjust going around out in the evenings, so not to be controlled by maybe some police, and basically trying to live from one day to the next. That was the biggest thing. No long-term projects, everything on hold, and just going day by day.
Yeah.
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 Yes. Also in terms of work, I work a lot with people on a personal basis, talking to them, visiting them at home, or treating them as when I have patients. And so that was a big change as well in treating them with phone calls, emails, or even video. So that was not only challenging for the others, but also just for me.
Yeah.
Just being at home and not feeling I can do as much as I would be able to do in a personal contact.
Yeah. And I'd imagine some people, they need that personal contact.
Absolutely.
Like a phone call is not enough. They need to see you face to face.
So I went, after a while I figured that this was not the way it would be. So we set up, I worked in an office with another psychotherapist, and we set up the rooms so that they were according to the law with the pandemic, so I could invite the patients over again.
Okay.
And all of them came. None of them wanted any more video sessions. They were happy to get out of their own isolation, I think.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And me too. So I was very happy to work with them on a face-to-face basis.
Yeah.
And it was much better than on the phone or just digital work, really.
Yeah. That must have been a big relief for you.
Yes. Yes.
As well.
I was actually looking forward to getting out of home for 2 days a week and actually working normally.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I was glad when the schools started reopening slowly. Our daughter was in the 4th grade, so they first opened elementary schools for the 4th graders because they would be going into secondary school, so they would need some more teaching. So the first day they opened, we sent her. It was optional, but we decided you have to go to school. It's really good for you. So it was good for everybody to just do their own things and have their own lives again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember being stuck together in a small apartment leads to conflicts that are not necessary. And just people stuck together in small rooms, it's not healthy.
Yeah. I think one way that was probably the most challenging for many people
was that their routine had to be completely changed in order to handle this new reality that we found ourselves in. And I know personally that this change in routine was probably the hardest part to deal with.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And looking at that, I really realized that the routine has never been the same since as well.
Okay.
Even though many things have gone back to sort of normal, I look at it differently now. Yes, it's I try to avoid digital meetings as much as possible, only if they're absolutely necessary. And the value of meeting people has increased. Before it was normal, let's meet or let's not meet. It was more casual, I think. But now for me, meeting people now is more important than before.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Me too. And yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for agreeing to meet me
Yes.
here today.
Yes, you're welcome.
So, how did you deal with the restrictions? You know, the things like the lockdowns, the isolations, and the masks and things. And,
I didn't have any problem with the masks. That was no issue for me. I tried to be out of the public transport as much as possible because when the heat came, it was a bit difficult. And the isolation was far more challenging to not contact family and friends as much, only through video. It was nice for some time, but I realized at some point I started getting demotivated contacting people digitally, so I just left it. So at some point you just start drawing back from
yeah.
contact with people naturally, except your close family that you have to live with in the pandemic.
Yeah, you can't exactly draw back from them.
No.
Can you?
Actually, we tried to give space to people, to each other. No? So having time for yourself in a restricted place. So our daughter decided to keep her room shut, and we could only come in when knocking. And our son did the same with the bedroom. So we decided to have times for ourselves, just to start, breathing again, because there's always contact. There wasn't much privacy. Yeah. But when the summer came, it got better. We could go out. The playgrounds were open again, so that was helpful actually. Yes.
I think personally myself, that was one aspect of the pandemic that I found especially challenging because my daughter at the time was only a year and a half old, and trying to keep a year and a half old child in a flat. I mean, they're not going to understand it. I barely understood it, and so yeah, that's. I was so glad again when it was when there wasn't so many restrictions, and luckily, I guess the restrictions for staying indoors didn't last too long. Like I seem to recall that we were able to go to the playgrounds fairly quickly again, and yeah, that was such a relief for me, and I'm sure for my daughter as well. I'm very grateful for at least that we were able to do that we were living somewhere where there were parks nearby, because obviously not everyone had that opportunity. And so, yeah.
Yes, I recall one situation going to the park with my son, and just after they had lifted the restrictions for the playgrounds, and the park was crowded with people. It was not fully lifted. They also limited the number of people in the park, and I recall the police driving through the park and making announcements with a microphone in the van that there shouldn't be too many people in the park because of the pandemic, and to just use all the space or leave the park and go for a walk because it was crowded. I've never seen it this crowded in normal times. Yeah. I think that everybody was just so eager to get out of their own places.
Yeah, it's like being rats in a maze, and then suddenly someone opens shows you
Absolutely.
the exit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started trying to do different things, going to the lakes and swimming and so on, and trying to not infect people. Maybe if we would carry the virus, we didn't really know, and also trying to somehow get out of the house. Really,
Yeah.
so that was challenging.
How would you say the pandemic affected your family?
Our family is very impulsive. I think part of that comes from my Italian side of the family. So when we have arguments, they're usually quite heated.
Okay.
So living in an apartment with two parents that are very impulsive in their arguments and a daughter that is in puberty, we had quite heated arguments and conflicts. So that was there already.
Yeah.
But I think the pandemic really accelerated these kind of conflicts and maybe made them bigger. Yes. And there was nowhere to go really. So we were stuck with that. Yeah. And so that was one thing that affected our family.
Okay.
And also, I remember my son, he just started kindergarten when the pandemic hit. So he was there for 3 months just doing the Eingewöhnung in German.
Yeah, the first weeks where...
The first weeks where you start adjusting to the kindergarten, and then they closed down. So when they reopened, we had to do the whole thing all over again. So maybe I would say a whole year was lost for him in the kindergarten to get really adjusted to everybody, because he was there on and off. So he was there for a few months, then they closed for about half a year, and then they reopened, and then they closed again for a shorter time. So for him, that was difficult. And he only really adjusted to the whole routine in the kindergarten the last 1.5 years.
Okay.
So I think that the pandemic kept him from adjusting there more quickly.
Okay.
Yes. So he couldn't really use the whole kindergarten time as he was supposed to. And now he's starting school. So for him, this is a big change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you feel there were any positive aspects of being in that enclosed space? Like, do you feel like maybe the way you were able to handle challenging situations improved because you had nowhere else to go?
Yes. I would say that before the pandemic, we were more people with visions. What should we do with our lives and so on. And the pandemic showed me it's also important to just go day by day, improve every day, and try to make it better than the day before. So how is it going to be tomorrow? Okay, we didn't have fights until noon. This is going to be great. Yes. Or nobody complained about breakfast. It's again the same, but nobody said anything. So this will be rather successful. We're going out to the park today for more than 2 hours, or to the lake. This is an absolute weekly highlight. Yeah. So thinking in these terms was very helpful, not to get lost in these. It's important to have visions for your own life and so on, but they are made in the daily routine, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was helpful to focus on that, on small things and daily things, because these make up our lives.
Yeah.
I think.
Was there any positive things or changes that came out of the pandemic for you, either during the pandemic or after the pandemic?
Okay. I would say that I focus more on my daily well-being. I have daily routines that I developed in the pandemic. I get up before everybody else and enjoy my coffee by myself. In the pandemic, that was an absolute necessary thing to do. I would get up at 5:30 maybe before everybody else, because we all could sleep in. But latest at 8 everybody would be awake anyway. And just enjoy my coffee and have time to myself. So this is what I kept from the pandemic.
Okay.
Yes. I didn't have that much before, but this is something I value much more now. Time for myself, and I know that I also can spend quality time with my family much better if I have enough time for me.
Yeah, it's important to get that balance.
Yes. So the pandemic really showed it to me. in this way. So with a hammer, but the importance of balancing personal time and time with the family or with friends. So
Definitely.
yeah.
And this is kind of a related question. Did you take up any new hobbies or learn new skills during the pandemic?
Not during the pandemic, but in the pandemic it was more about survival. But in younger years I like to go hiking a lot. I somehow forgot about this for the last 10, 12 years. We did it occasionally, but during the pandemic I really developed a craving. I come from the mountains, so I really developed this. I need to go back. And so I think it was 2021 when the pandemic was coming to an end, more or less. I went to my hometown with my daughter and we went hiking in the mountains, in the Alps. Something I've missed a long time. Yeah, so, and now we do it regularly.
Cool.
So this is something I look forward to the whole year. Yeah. So last year we did a week of hiking, very up much on a high level, 2,500, 3,000 meters, and going from different huts, they call them, they have huts in these heights, and then you can stay there overnight, and then the next day you leave and you go to the next one.
Okay.
So we did like a week of that. Yeah. So that was very nice.
Cool.
No mobile signals, nothing. So not even emergency calls. The huts have like satellite phones maybe.
Right.
But we're completely cut off. So that was nice.
It's a different kind of
It's
isolation.
different kind of isolation, but it's more expected. You know it before.
Yeah.
And you just enjoy the nature. No trouble with digital things. Yeah, that was...
I think for me personally, and probably for many people, that was one of the hardest parts of the lockdowns was the need to use so much digital devices just to kind of stay in touch with your family and friends and have meetings and stuff.
Absolutely. So, and it also takes energy. I think it takes a lot of energy to stay in touch over the digital media. Yeah. And at some point I just didn't feel like it anymore. I didn't have the energy. Another online meeting, another Zoom meeting, and so I just, whatever was possible, I just left it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get this kind of digital exhaustion, I suppose you might call it.
Yes. So I preferred. Actually, my daughter started, and we started writing letters to people, like
nice.
the old-fashioned way, and that was nice. And we got letters back as well.
Cool.
And postcards and so on. That was quite nice. And as soon as we were able to meet in the park, I would go out and meet. And even if we would sit 3 meters apart, it was nice to just talk to people.
Yeah, face to face again.
Face to face again, absolutely.
Would you say that the pandemic taught you any valuable lessons? I know you've mentioned one or two things, but if there's anything specific that you'd like to talk about in regards to this question?
I think on a global level, I think we're all connected. So the pandemic affects us all in the same way. We were all more or less isolated, depending on the countries, of course, but that there are things that affect everybody, every human, and so we're all the same.
Yeah.
We're all the same species. It was clear for me before, but that showed it again, that we can all be connected, even though this is a crisis. Yeah, so that was interesting and good. And on a personal level, how to live in a small room with too many people. That was a lesson actually, because we've learned a lesson in trying to respect each other's boundaries much better. It wasn't so necessary before, but then it was crucial when we were stuck together.
Yeah, of course.
So time for ourselves. Small things like knocking before you come into the room. Yeah, it didn't occur to us before, or to me. And looking more after each other.
Yeah. Would you say that your life is different now? And if so, in what way?
Yes, of course it's different. I think that isolation does something to people. So I think first thing is to value my own privacy and my own boundaries, and at the same time also appreciating the contact that I have with people. Yes. So you value something when you don't have it.
Yeah.
And then when you have it, the usual effect is it becomes usual or routine again, but not after this pandemic. It's really important, I think, to connect with people and also to have your own personal space.
I think some things like what you just said is you don't realize how important or necessary they are until they're not there, or you don't have the opportunity
Yes.
to have those things.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. There's a saying in English: the grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah.
So you always want what you don't have.
Yeah.
But the pandemic changed it a bit. You also appreciate what you have, especially the social bond connections and the social bonds. Yes, and at the same time, everybody else had the same kind of wish to have contact with people, so that was mutual.
Yeah.
Which was very nice. Yeah. And I really appreciated all the efforts people made to stay in contact, even though it was digitally. I still have these scenes from television, actually, when the Italians were isolated and they would sing on the balcony for each other.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
That was really nice.
Yeah.
So we're pretty much at the end of the podcast, but I was wondering if you have any last thoughts or things you would like to add before we wrap up.
Stay healthy, everybody.
Good.
And if you feel isolated, it's okay to talk to people. They will appreciate it, and it will be helpful. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for coming here today to speak with me, Dominik. I hope you've all enjoyed this podcast. Next week, we'll be having another speaker to come and join us and tell us about their experiences.
And if you're listening to this podcast and would like to get more directly involved in this project, just head on over to my website, jodycoopermusic.com, and click on the tab, What's Your Story? There, you'll be able to answer some funny questions on your experiences during the pandemic, and you can also get a chance to win some prizes from me. And if you like, you can also do a podcast with me. Just leave your details there, and I'll get back in touch with you. But I would just like to finish off by saying thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to introducing my next guest and talking with you next time. Bye for now.